Hello and welcome to Makeup and Media Analysis, where I sit down, I do my makeup and I talk about a piece of media that I've consumed recently, do some critical analysis of it. I never claim to be a makeup artist, so let's just hope for the media analysis is better than the makeup. And if you think, wow, that's such an amazing concept, I'm already sold on this woman's fantastic personality, then go ahead and click subscribe, because I need validation. I put a lot of effort into it. So today we are talking about Drag Race UK and why it's better. Much better than the American version. Well, in my humble opinion. Why is it better? Well, to put it simply, it's because the English are funnier. Well, the British in general, actually, I should say. But of course, the British in general are less funny than the funniest people on the planet, which is, of course, the Irish. But that will be a rather short video, so instead, let's get into it. Just like with my Line of Duty video, I would like to start by introducing us to the British context of drag. And that context actually begins with our old mate Bill Shakespeare, who was a bicon, by the way, you get it? Shakespeare's plays would have a lot of female characters in them, but at the time it was illegal for women to appear on stage, because for a woman to appear on stage in the time of Shakespeare, they would be compared to a sex worker, in obviously a derogatory fashion, and women were not legally allowed to appear on stage until the reign of Charles II, which was almost 50 years after Shakespeare died. Drag, in the form that we know it today, became a national issue in 1732 when there was a trial. The drag queen Princess Seraphina, whose boy name was John Cooper, accused Tom Gordon of stealing his drag costumes, aka women's clothing. Unfortunately, Gordon was acquitted. But the case is notable because not only did it involve drag, but the court decided not to prosecute Princess Seraphina for sodomy. There have been a lot of famous trials regarding queerness in the UK, probably most notably the trial of Oscar Wilde. And if you ever read a transcript for this trial, honestly, it's everything that Oscar Wilde says is absolutely hilarious. And if straight people had any sort of sense of humour, history would have been very different. Homosexuality was legalised in the UK in 1967. By homosexuality I mean a relationship between two men. Fun fact, lesbianism was never legalised in the UK because Queen Victoria believed that women wouldn't want to fuck each other. And she fucked her cousin, so obviously she should be the barometer upon which sexual relationships are measured. Unfortunately, this bill did not mean equality, the age of consent was still different, and in the 1970s there was a very famous case where Liberal leader Jeremy Thorpe tried to have his lover Norman Scott assassinated. It went very badly, they only killed the dog unfortunately. But the reason this case is so notable, even though Thorpe was acquitted, it was essentially the first time that gayness was being openly discussed on British television. By the 80s there were more queer mainstream icons. Particularly in drag, there was the character of Lily Savage, played by comedian Paul O'Grady. Also in the 80s, the LGSM, Lesbians and Gay Support the Minors, became so pivotal in British politics that in 1985 at the Labour Party conference they passed a resolution to unilaterally support gay rights. There's another party conference for the Labour Party coming up this weekend, and MP Rosie Duffield has recently come out as a transphobe, and some people are saying at this party conference Labour should discuss whether or not, trans people deserve any basic human rights. So, times change. Although British drag has a very different history to American drag, we still owe a lot to American ballroom culture. Americans are much more likely to say fuck you in their rebellion. British people, well, we do say fuck you, but then the mainstream media goes, actually, they earned their rights by being polite. Season 1 of Drag Race UK had some teething problems. For example, a lot of the early challenges were very much, here are British exports that Americans enjoy, like, the Queen in Downton Abbey. I hate the royal family. I hate them, they are parasites, they are stealing our money, they are not representative of Britishness at all. And it really frustrated me that the only queen in the workroom who showed any sort of discontent for the royal family was the Canadian queen, Crystal, whom I adore Crystal, I wish the Brits had spoke up against them. But anyway, I would assume, because Blue Hydrangea is Irish, that she would have some objection to the monarchy. Then again, maybe she's Protestant. Listen, she has a right to be Protestant. She doesn't have a right to support the monarchy. And that's the tea. And as for Downton Abbey, I watched one episode and I was just like, oh, these posh people are insufferable. And all the working class people are also played by posh people. Rose Leslie, for example, grew up in a castle and decided to play a northerner. Her dad's a mega Tory. You couldn't find any real working class people? No, of course you couldn't. That's not how Britain works. But despite all these complaints, it was the cast that really elevated the show. I mean, just speaking as somebody who is British, it's nice to see Britain portrayed as it is, as a very diverse nation. And for American viewers, there are, some parts of Britain that they might not have ever heard of before. Most Americans, from my understanding, when they hear British, they think somebody like me, who has a southern London accent, right? I'm from East London, that's not the point. They don't think of somebody northern, they don't think of somebody Scottish, even though they are still technically part of the UK, but they do understand Scotland, or the idea of Scotland. Tace was here to introduce Americans to the concept of Wales. What's the concept of Wales? Dragons and Gavin and Stacey, there you go. And of course, this diverse representation of the UK meant that we could have conversations about the fact that at the time of filming, gay marriage wasn't illegal in Northern Ireland. Some of the queens in the workroom didn't know that. It's important that we are always fighting for equal rights. And in that note, equal marriage will not exist until disabled people can get married without losing their benefits. Lots of disabled people are queer too, As I just mentioned, the UK show managed to have conversations that the US one has never had. Firstly, there was a conversation about gay marriage in Northern Ireland. Also, in season 2, there was a conversation about what it means to be non-binary between Ginny Lemon and Bibbidi Bombulash. It's not just people like J.K. Rowling spreading transphobic misinformation. It's MPs like Rosie Duffield. It's the fact that the 2018 Gender Recognition Act still hasn't really had any of its recommendations put into practice. It's the recently overturned Keira Bell case, which essentially said, oh, we don't think that trans youth know anything, and they shouldn't be allowed to make any sort of decisions about their gender. It's been overturned, luckily, but fucking hell, how could that have ever been approved, you know what I mean? So in this context of extreme bigotry, it was nice that TV show had this conversation with heart and kindness and not some imagined debate where a cis man just yells at a trans person, does that mean that I can identify as black? Does that mean that I can identify as a penguin? My brother still follows Piers Morgan on Twitter, what a bellend. However, the conversation is far from over, as Sean Fay stated in her book The Transgender Issue. Media coverage of the trans community rarely seems to be driven by a desire to inform and educate the public about the actual issues and challenges facing a group who, as all evidence indicates, are likely to experience extreme discrimination throughout their lives. In the show, there is a brief discussion about how Ginny grew up in an abusive household. It's good to see these conversations being had. I don't know how much Drag Race is maybe the right forum to discuss trans homelessness or hate crimes and things like that. I know they have discussed these issues in the past. Furthermore, I don't want them to force contestants to discuss these issues to the point where it's a bit, exploitative. I don't want that sort of manufactured, ooh, look at how great we are for breaking barriers moments, Next season of RuPaul's Drag Race is going to include the first cis woman ever cast on the show, and, cis white gay men were just like, oh, this is the show for us! How dare they allow a woman to be on the show? When, number one, women have been on the show before. Trans women are still women. Kylie's the Neat Love just won, and she's a trans woman. And also, sometimes it really is. It doesn't matter if, an entitled white man is gay or straight, he's still going to be entitled. Nothing in the universe is bigger, not even a black hole. None of it's bigger than a white man's audacity. My babe, the current reigning queen of Drag Race UK Lawrence Training, has been defending Victoria Scone though, saying that Even though she is a member of the LGBTQ community, she's a lesbian, it didn't matter. Even if she's a straight woman, women have a place in drag. So, you know, those fucking twinks can just shove it up their asses, can't they? Oh, I'm getting very sweary in this video. It's okay, because my channel is not in the least monetized. Casting a cis woman is a step in the right direction, because often Drag Race, even though the whole conceit is to dress like a quote-unquote woman, you often get these cis men using pretty misogynistic language saying, oh, I just want to be such a whore, I just want to be such a slag, and it's just like, at the end of the day, you could use some more respectful language. You could. Also, like, come on, we need... Also, come on, like, it's 2021, we need drag kings. We need to be breaking down the ideas of masculinity and femininity from every single angle. And do you know what? I don't think RuPaul should host that show because that's not in his wheelhouse. Get a famous drag king to host it, honestly. It's not that hard. It's not that hard when you have as much money as RuPaul does. Drag Race UK is also better than its American counterpart because of the judges. I'll explain why. The two other main judges, other than RuPaul and Michelle, are Alan Carr and Graham Norton, both of whom are quite well-established stand-up comedians in the UK. Probably the most common platform for comedians to get big in the UK is the panel show, which is essentially a format where you have a group of comedians sitting around and throwing remarks at each other to get a laugh. It's like manufactured banter, essentially. Good examples of this would be Taskmaster, or Would I Lie to You, QI, something like that. My point being, Alan and Graham are experts at making comedy work within a panel format. Furthermore, Graham and Alan aren't just UK household names, they're internationally known household names. I enjoy Carson and Ross, and I know that Carson was on the original Queer Eye, but honestly, do they actually exist outside of RuPaul's Drag Race? I think if RuPaul isn't standing next to them, they sort of just disappear into the ether. And of course we had some great guest judges. I mean, shout out to Jade Furwell. I mean, she's always out here supporting the LGBT community, but do you know what? I think she could go a step further. I think she should marry me. That would be a really good show of support, in my personal opinion. Another favourite would be Lorraine Kelly, even though I'm really annoyed that she failed her taxes. I think she was a really great guest judge. And she's a great drag mother for Lawrence Chaney. In the lead up to the All-Star 6 finale, Eureka O'Hara called out Drag Race fans for dismissing her and fellow competitor Eureka O'Hara when it came to fans voting on who they really wanted to see crowned. Jesus, why do we ever try and contour? It's so bad! And Eureka was right. Every time a Drag Race finale rolls around, fans almost always just completely ignore the fat contestants. And yes, this ignorance is obviously due to fat phobia, but what is the reasoning behind this fat phobia? In her video on the subject, Bossy Queen asked his audience, why are fans like this, and how do we improve? How do we show fat queens the love that they deserve? Well, wonder no more. Your favourite curvy queen that's terrible at makeup is here to enlighten you. With the help of, a fellow chunky Dane. The Fatpocalypse has been coined by my fatlicious friend Kat Pause as a cooler and more fun name for the obesity epidemic, which she describes as the word that they use on the news for the notion that we're all becoming fatter and it's going to kill us all. Kat Pause is a fat studies researcher and scholar. She is academic as fuck. Sophie actually did describe this concept of fat annihilation earlier on the page. She wrote, It's called symbolic annihilation. It's a term coined in 1976 by George Gerbner to describe the absence of representation in the media. Basically, by not being represented at all, it sends a signal that you really don't matter. It's a method of making sure that we keep pressing the same group of people. Fuck. If, every time we look at a television, everyone who is not a white man feels a little bit worse, it helps maintain the current system, where the white man is in charge of almost everything. Essentially, when Drag Race fans refuse to acknowledge the talent of fat queens, it's because they refuse to acknowledge the value of fat people generally. The idea is, if we never give fat people any credit, then maybe they'll realise that they're not welcome, and that actually drag is only for skinny twinks. And all of this maintains that skinny white queens are always going to be the most powerful members of the community. Drag Race UK saw the franchise's first fat winner in Lawrence Chaney. It was a bit controversial, a lot of people thought Bimini was robbed, and listen, I love Bimini, I'm going to see her soon. But personally, I don't think that she was robbed. I think that Lawrence put in a really great fight. And also, if the first challenge was judged fairly, he would have also had 4 badges, because listen, I love Asina Mandela as well. I love an East London girl, but honestly, she won that challenge because she's thin. Did you see Lawrence Chaney's? Did you see the stained glass hat? Like, anyone from Glasgow could have recognised that immediately. It was a robbery, but it's okay because Lawrence won it overall. Interestingly, the fans said that a fatter queen was robbed over a thinner one in season 1 as well. Davina de Campo seemed like she was set to win it because she had won loads of challenges and she'd never been the bottom 2. But in the final challenge, Davina basically did a performance that was really boring. He just did lots of splits over stage, whereas the Vivian, who ended up winning, did a really dynamic performance doing dancing that she had previously struggled with in the series. Also, I've sort of soured on Davina because I followed her on Twitter for a bit, and god, that woman, she loves a fatphobic joke. She loves a fatphobic joke. And honestly, I think that it's very irresponsible for somebody with her platform who has a lot of young people following her to be making such outwardly fatphobic jokes without any sort of trigger warning or anything. So yeah, I had to unfollow her, but do you know what? At the end of the day, you can make all the fatphobic jokes you want, you're still going to get beaten by a fatter bitch. By having a fat queen win, you're not able to erase the charisma, uniqueness, nerve and talent of fat queens. Because whenever there's a drag event in the UK right now, Lawrence will be there. Lawrence will be headlining it. It means that thin queens can't erase this talent, and it means that fat queens are allowed to take centre stage for once. We're not always going to be the bridesmaids, sometimes we're going to be the bride. Moving into season 3, I hope that the UK's version of Drag Race can continue to push the box forward. I'm frustrated that there's only 2 cast members of colour and only one of them is black. I'm frustrated by the lack of body diversity, but I am really gunning for Victoria Scone. I mean, part of me thinks, oh, she's only been cast for diversity, we're never going to let a woman win, but this year we've seen a fat queen and a trans queen win, which I never thought would happen either. I think RuPaul might be learning some things, and I don't think it's from the production. I think Michelle Visage is much more up to date with her politics than he is, and I think she's probably bollocking him behind the scenes, so thanks, Michelle. Comment down below, who do you want to win Drag Race? Do you think that I've made some fair points about the erasure of fat queens? Or just comment something like, you're beautiful and talented and amazing and your makeup isn't at all absolutely terrible and you should continue making these videos because it will help my self-esteem. And also like, share and subscribe. Yeah, subscribe please. Subscribe please. Please subscribe.